The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Able Solutions webinar, the importance of CAPA within your quality management system. Thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. Please mute your computer or phone speakers to prevent any feedback. And if you have any questions, please post that to the webinar chat so that we can try to answer them at the end of the session. Okay, so today we're going to go through a few things. Here's our agenda. We're going to first go into some introductions. Then we're going to talk about the benefits of the QMS system, in particular the CAPA. We're going to talk about what is QMS Share, our Able Solutions offering. Then I'm going to go into our demo for controlled documents and demo our CAPA solution as well. And then at the end, we'll have some time for some Q&A. So first, a little bit about Able Solutions. For over 2 decades, clients have trusted us to help them reduce the cost, risk, and implementation time for solving the most critical business, IT, and collaboration challenges. We help companies achieve powerful business improvements through document management and workflow-enabled SharePoint solutions, custom applications, and technology planning and supports, and also a wide array of complementary IT services. Among our growing list of industry-specific solutions, we offer pre-designed collaboration frameworks that shrink implementation time and cost, and we'll be talking about one of those today. As a long-standing Microsoft partner, we're focused on improving business productivity. Able Solutions now offers services to help you achieve better IT cost control. In addition to our partnership with Microsoft, we are also an Nintex go-to partner in the Southeast and the longest serving partner in the region, delivering Nintex software services and training since 2008. Okay, a little bit about myself. I'm Eric Gregorich, a senior SharePoint architect and consultant. I've been working on SharePoint since SharePoint 2003. I've been with Able Solutions for 11 years now. I started here as a C# developer and a SharePoint developer. In my current role at Able Solutions, I help companies build business applications on the SharePoint platform. This includes SharePoint solutions on-premise and Office 365. We're seeing a lot more Office 365 business these days. I have with me Aaron Rube as well. He's going to introduce himself and start talking about the CAPA piece.
Hello, my name is Aaron Robe. I'm a quality assurance supervisor with Applied Technical Services, and I've been with them since 2015. I'm an American Society for Quality senior member. I hold 2 certifications with that organization as a certified quality auditor as well as a certified quality technician. In addition to that, I'm a NQA1 nuclear lead auditor, and I've been in the quality assurance field for over 15 years. So just real briefly wanted to talk about CAPA. What is it and why is it important? CAPAs are very important in a QMS system because they help identify escapes in your quality system. Most importantly, to not only issue escapes, but also to track action items to ensure completion. It's important to track in-process tasks, as well as to be able to report and identify current status. CAPA is important for regulatory concerns. A lot of different third parties out there want to make sure that we have a system in place. You have to make sure you identify root cause accurately. If you fail to identify root cause accurately, most situations your escape will happen again. CAPA is an important input to your management review, which typically happens annually. And it's also important to complete trend analysis. That way you can help identify recurrences within your quality system. CAPA process automation. You want to streamline your workflow, automated notifications, so that way you're not tracking the process manually. Helps you reduce cost and inefficiency. You want to make sure that you document action plans. Otherwise, action items that are due will not be completed. And also verification that the action that was taken for the CAPA process was effective. And we've already discussed the reporting as well as the input to management review.
Okay, so we'll have a little bit more information about the CAPA process and going into some of those details a little later in the demo. First, next step, I wanted to introduce our product offering called QMS Share and what it is and how it relates to the CAPA piece. So over the years at Able Solutions, we have built many custom document management systems, CAPA tracking, contract management solutions, and similar types of solutions on top of SharePoint. So that's given us a lot of experience and understanding of how these solutions need to be built, and we see a lot of repeated solutions that we're building. So we started building these solution accelerators, and in addition to some of our other solution accelerators like our Realty Share accelerator, which is based around real estate framework solution, and we have ShareNet, which is our SharePoint intranet solution. We developed our QMS Share solution to provide a framework that allows us to quickly implement a QMS system into SharePoint using all the knowledge that we've learned over the years. And this framework includes all of the plumbing that we would typically use for document management. It includes all the workflows, the content types, lists, libraries, things like that. Anything that we would use around a CAPA process and controlled documents, that type of thing. And any other building blocks that we typically reuse over and over again in our implementations with our clients. So when we implement a QMS Share solution, we're taking that foundation and we're quickly implementing that into your SharePoint environment. And then we customize it as much as needed to make it your own solution and work for your own processes and workflows. So some of the things I'm going to be showing during the demo today is just a simple example of the overall solution. Some common things that we would customize would be things like the managed metadata, the workflow process, content types, document content types and naming, templates, things like that. So our QMS Share solution consists of several modules, including controlled documents, CAPA. We have some audit tracking, supplier management, anything that you would need around the QMS application. And today we'll be spending most of the time in controlled documents and in the CAPA piece. And the goal is to show you what these processes can look like in SharePoint so that you can determine if it's something that your organization needs. And in regards to the environments that these solutions are built on, we have implemented QMS Share in SharePoint 2013 and 2016. Those are your on-premise environments hosted on your own servers. And for the workflows in these environments, we typically would use SharePoint Designer. That's the free tool that's included with SharePoint for building workflows. And for more complicated workflow processes, we do recommend a third-party workflow solution like Nintex Workflow. And that gives us ability to do more complicated workflow approval routing, things like escalation and delegation and permission management and things like that. We've also implemented QMS Share in SharePoint Online. In this environment, we still use SharePoint Designer workflows, but we also started to use Microsoft Flow, which is a new modern workflow engine included in Office 365. And we still recommend Nintex Workflow for more complicated workflow scenarios in SharePoint Online. Okay, now I'm going to jump into the demo. What I'm going to show is Office 365 modern implementation using a lot of the new modern UI and Microsoft Flow workflows that are in SharePoint Online now. That means that if you have an on-premise environment, things would look a little bit different, but the overall functionality would remain the same. Okay, let me jump over to my demo slide real quick. Okay, so QMS Share, we have our landing page here. This is the page that the users would land on whenever they visit the site. In this page consists of things like, quality news, quality events. We can have an events list on this page, and we have some links to the different locations for the different sites that have controlled documents, have their own controlled documents in the system, things like that on the home page. And this is all customized based on what you would need. And then in addition to that, we have a dashboard page. This dashboard page typically would contain things that the user would use to see the overall system and what's going on in the quality management system. And this can include some graphs and some charts, but it could also include some views into the actions, the tasks that the users need to complete as well. Okay. So first I'm going to talk through some of the controlled documents functionality and give you an idea of what that looks like. So in our controlled documents in QMS Share, we use the concept of working documents and published documents. So working documents are where you actually make the changes to the documents and add new documents and manage the documents through the change control workflow. And published documents are where the end users would see the documents and be able to view the documents and use the documents in their day-to-day work. Based on permissions, only the people who can make changes to the documents and approve documents would see the working documents library. So the end users would only see published documents. So if I go into working documents library here, we can see that we have a lot of this is basic SharePoint functionality. I wanted to go through some of that. We have our view. Our initial view is showing all the draft documents. These are the documents that are being changed. And we have different views based on the status of the workflows. So we have documents that are pending approval, documents that have been approved, and documents that have been rejected, and some other views. And all these views are configurable to based on what makes most sense, what you need to see and what you need to use. So in addition, in SharePoint Online, you have the ability to quickly search and filter these SharePoint libraries. So if I click on the filter button here, I can quickly see all the work instructions for this library. And it gives you a way to very quickly find all the documents. If you have hundreds or thousands of documents in these libraries, you can quickly filter the documents to find exactly what you need very quickly. And if there's specific filter that you use over and over again, it can be saved as a view for that document, so you can quickly access it and jump right to it. Okay, clear this view out. Okay, so next I'm going to talk through the document approval workflow a little bit. So first, you may be adding new documents into the system here. And whenever you add a new document, we generate a document number automatically. And this usually consists of an abbreviation of the department name, the content type prefix that defines whether it's a quality procedure or work instruction, that type of thing, and a unique ID as well. Of course, this is all configurable based on what naming convention you may need in your environment. We also track the revisions for these documents, the revision dates, and all that information. The version history is all tracked for these documents, so whenever you're being audited, you can quickly view all of the version history for the document, see all the changes that were made to it. Okay, so let's say we go into this document library. We've added some documents in here that are all draft documents. We're making our changes to the documents and we think it's ready to go, so we want to request approval for it. So this is where our workflow process kicks in, and we can just click on the link over here to start the approval process. And it's going to open up a panel here, and in this case we're using Microsoft Flow to start the workflow. Depending on what workflow solution we have in your environment, the experience may be a little different, but the functionality is basically the same. So first we're just going to ask what is the reason for the change and the description of the change. So we can just say that this is a new document, and I'm just going to put in a quick description here, and I can start the workflow. So behind the scenes, what this is doing is there's specific approvers that are assigned to this document. We can configure this in different ways. We can assign an approver group to the entire library, or we can get as granular as each document would have its own unique approvers. This allows a lot of flexibility. So whenever the document is going out for approval, those approvers are going to get an email to approve the document, and they can open up and review the document and approve it or reject it from that email. So if I notice that from this page, if I refresh, the document should be removed from my drafts and should be moved to my pending view. And give me a second here. I'll jump over to my email and see if I can. It takes a minute sometimes for that to come through. There's multiple ways for the approver to approve the email. One is through their email itself, and one is through Outlook or through Microsoft Flow. If you're approving through Microsoft Outlook, you can actually do your approval and put in your comments directly in Outlook. Oops. If you're wanting to go into Flow itself and see all of the items that you have in your queue to be approved, you can go directly into Flow. So I can go into Flow and see my approvals, and there's my item in my queue. So the experience is almost the same in Outlook, where I have an approve or reject button, and I can put in some comments if I need to. So in a normal scenario, you may have one approver for the document, but you may have a whole group of people that are approving the document. And as they enter all the comments, all these comments would be shown on the page and tracked with the document itself. So you can see everything that's happening during that approval process. So I'm going to approve that document and give it a minute here. Since it is a workflow, it takes a second. So the document should be removed from my pending queue and moved over to my approved library. Since this document was approved, obviously it would go to my approval library, and what happens is a version of that document is moved to the published documents library for all the end users to see. So I can see that this one was just published a few seconds ago. It has the current revision number, all of the information with the document, and it has all the latest changes for that document. So this is what the end users would be using whenever they're working from this document. Okay. In addition to the document approval workflow, we have a document review workflow. So for each document, we would typically have a document owner and an expiration or review date for that document. And so many days prior to that expiration date, the document owner would receive an email initiated by the workflow saying that the document needs to be reviewed. So they would go into that document, review the document, determine if action is needed on that document, whether changes are needed, or maybe the document really needs to be expired and archived. So at that point, they can archive the document to an archive library, or they can just change the expiration date, saying no changes are needed. But we still use this document, so we're going to make it expire sometime in the future. And the comments that they enter for that are all tracked. Of course, that's a little hard to demo here just because of the timing of the workflow, since it happens automatically based on the expiration date. So we have the document review workflow, and we have some archival process as well. So you can archive these documents into a separate library, so you can keep them, but remove them from being able to be used by the end users. Okay, so that is a quick summary of our controlled documents module. Next, I'm going to be jumping into the CAPA module and going over some of those details. Just give me a second here to jump back over to my slide. So as Aaron stated earlier, what CAPA is and why it's important, I'm going to show how we can implement CAPA and QMS Share. And the first step in our CAPA process is to capture items that would need to be tracked. These could be non-conformances, quality objectives for your organization, customer feedback, audit findings, all kinds of different information that you want to track. Anything that's related, has an issue that needs to be resolved, can be tracked. Once those items are captured, someone would process those items and determine if further action is needed to resolve the issue, or if some action is needed to prevent the issue from occurring again. And if further action is not needed, the item is simply closed. But if action is needed, we automatically generate a CAPA, and then we walk through the CAPA process to identify the root cause, assign any corrective and preventative actions, and then once those are completed, monitor the CAPA for changes, for the effectiveness of the changes, and then run through some final approval, and eventually close out the item. And whenever the CAPA is closed, the original item is closed as well. And I'll walk through that. Okay, so now back to our demo of the CAPA module. So we have several SharePoint lists and libraries over here that we're using to track non-conformances, customer feedback, different types of issues. I'm going to walk through a couple of those just to show you what that looks like and how we can generate a CAPA from those. So from our non-conformances list, these are discrepancies that deviate from the standards, so they need to be tracked so that we can resolve the issues and prevent the issues from occurring again. So it's very easy from in a SharePoint to just track all these items. And once we have all these items in the list here, let me jump over to anything that's closed. We can have different views, what's open, what's closed, what's pending. And just like the control documents, we can easily filter based on our metadata for these documents. So we can search also from the top corner up here. We can filter to find what we need very quickly. So it's very convenient to find the items that you're looking for. So I'm going to walk through creating a new item here. And again, this is something that we would customize in your environment based on what you need to capture. I can create a new item in SharePoint, and I can put in the problem details. I'm just going to put in some example text here. Okay. We can track all kinds of metadata, and some examples of that metadata could be the business unit that it's associated with, how often the issue occurs, the severity of the issue, contributing parties. Is it an internal issue? Is it a customer issue, supplier issue? So all of that can be routed accordingly. And we can even tie it to a specific standard if we wanted to. And we have this set up for all of the lists and libraries in our SharePoint application here, where we can either browse the standard to find this specific standard that it applies to, or we can just start searching for it and select that. That's helpful for reporting and to just be able to quickly see, where the weaknesses are. We can log who has reported the issue, and any other custom metadata that you may need to capture here. So when we save the item, the first thing that's happening behind the scenes is a unique ID is going to be generated for that item. If we refresh here, it should show up in a second. So we have an ID that is generated from non-conformance with the year and a unique number for that item next to it, and that we use that for tracking across the application, including the CAPA piece. If we click on that item, we can see all the details, Of course, we can edit the details as needed. And what happens behind the scenes is, there's typically a group of people that are going to review all these non-conformances and determine if action is needed or not. So this is where someone would go in, view all of the open items, review those items, see what the issue is, and then they would basically process that item. Again, we're using flow for the workflow here. What it's going to ask you initially is a CAPA required for this item? If the answer is no, you can just select no and put in some comments, and the item is immediately closed, but it's there for reference. If a CAPA is required, it's going to create a CAPA item for us automatically, which I'll show in a few moments. So I update that item. If I refresh my view, that item is removed from my open queue and it goes to pending. And then I can see everything that's pending from there, and those will be pending CAPA items. And whenever the CAPA is completed, this original item will be automatically moved to closed. All right, so that's our non-conformances. Next, I'm just going to show another example of customer feedback, just to show something that's similar, but a different type of issue. So it's very similar, where we have different views based on the stage of the customer feedback, and we can create a new item up here. I always use coffee as my examples for some reason. So we can customize this metadata to what makes sense, the most sense for customer feedback. So it could have the customer name, location, all kinds of information about the customer. But we can also reuse some of that functionality that we see in the non-conformance as well. I'm going to fill in some of this information here and click on save. So again, behind the scenes, a unique number is going to be generated for this item. And if we have somebody assigned to process these items, they would be notified. So they would go into this list, view all the open customer feedback items, and very similar to the non-conformances, click on process, determine whether a CAPA is required or not, and put in any information. Very simple example, of course. So then a workflow is going to run behind the scenes, and since I said that a CAPA is required, it's going to generate that for us. It's going to remove it from our open queue and move it to a pending queue. And if CAPA was not required, it would just move it to closed and be tracked for reference. So now I'm just going to jump into our CAPA list and show you what that looks like. And again, we have some audit tracking, quality objectives, things like that. Very similar process where you're just capturing the data, capturing all that metadata, processing those items, determining whether CAPA is needed or not to address the issues. And if so, a CAPA item is created. So I can go into our CAPA library here. And very similar, we have different views based on the stage that the CAPA is in. We have initiated, pending is being pending review, to be determine the root cause, assign actions, things like that. And I'll get into the other stages as we go through the process. So my first view here is the initiated stage. It's going to show me all the items that were initiated. I can quickly filter to see everything that's just customer feedback or non-conformances, whatever I need to to do. Now, if I click into the item, it's going to open a page that has a lot more detail around that CAPA. So at the top of the page here, we have some summary information. And if you notice, the CAPA was automatically generated from the non-conformance or the customer feedback, and a lot of that data was just passed over automatically. So it saves us from retyping things as much. So we have some summary information up here. And then we have the option to add some supporting documents to this library. So add a couple of documents here. So we can have additional metadata on those documents if we wanted to. And that's added to your document library. So anything that's related to the CAPA that needs to be tracked, and that could be emails that were received from the customer or from the supplier, just documents that are related to the issue. And then further down on the page here, we have some corrective action tasks and preventative action tasks. So one of the first steps in the workflow process is, somebody would be assigned this CAPA and be responsible for seeing through the process through the end, make sure all the issues are addressed. So one of the first steps can be automatic depending on how your organization works. It could be automatically assigned to a specific person or a group of people, and those people would review the CAPA and fill in all the tasks and determine the root cause and all of that information. In the case of the demo, I don't have it assigned automatically, so I can just assign it to somebody. So I can just go into my properties view here and assign it to myself. And after I save that, the document, the CAPA item is going to be changed from a initiated state into more of a pending state because it's been assigned. And since I assigned it to myself, I would be responsible for going in here and creating all the corrective actions, determining the root cause, all of that information. Okay. So I can see it's assigned to me. It's now in progress. So I can go into my queue. I have a specific view in my CAPA library that shows me everything that's assigned to me. And I can click on open this item up again from that queue. And I'll be back to the same page where I can review all the details, update the root cause and all the other metadata that we're capturing for this item, and start adding corrective and preventative actions. So one thing that I want to note on the properties page, this page that you're seeing here is a SharePoint out-of-the-box list form. So it's fairly bland because it's just showing everything, all the fields on the page where I can go and update everything. What we typically do is provide a custom form on top of this or use a third-party form product like Nintex Forms to make this a little bit more smart. So it has some custom validation and it only shows some specific fields during specific stages of the workflow process. But in this case, I can just open the item, change the status as needed, enter information for the root cause and any of the other metadata that I want to capture. Okay, back to my CAPA details page. So the next step as the assigned user, I would want to go in, identify my root cause, fill in all that information, and start assigning some corrective and preventive action tasks. So I can just click on this button here, and it opens up a form for me to enter the tasks. And assign that to somebody. And I can put in a due date. Some of this can be automated. We can automatically set the due date to be 7 days from now when it was created, that type of thing. And we basically just go through and add a whole bunch of tasks anything that needs to be completed by specific people to address this CAPA issue. Once the task is created, the person would receive a notification that they've been assigned a task. They have a specific view that they can go to in SharePoint to see all of their tasks, and they can also see it from their dashboard page as well. So they basically go through all these tasks. They can open up the CAPA item, review the root cause, get some context around the issue, and then complete their tasks. And once they complete the task, they just open up the task, mark the status as completed, and do that for each of the tasks that they're assigned. I'm going to skip showing some of that just to speed things along a little bit. We do have a workflow behind the scenes that's watching all these tasks. Whenever all the tasks for this CAPA item are completed, the assigned user responsible for the CAPA is notified, saying that all the items have been completed and it's ready for review. So then I would go back into this CAPA, review all the tasks, make sure everything was completed as expected, and I can go in there and I can change the status to a monitoring stage. So at this point, I can change the stage to monitoring, and I can put in a due date for the monitoring as well. And again, with the custom form, we can kind of group this together based on this current status. Oops. So now we're at a stage in the workflow where the CAPA item is being monitored. If I jump back to my views, I can go into my monitoring view, and I can see all the CAPAs that are being monitored at the moment. And this means that all the actions have been completed, but we're just giving it some time to review and determine that everything that was completed was effective. And once that monitoring due date is reached, the assigned user could go back into that CAPA. They would review the effectiveness of the changes and enter that effectiveness into the form. And if everything goes as expected, they would change the status to pending review. And at that point, the quality team or the department could be notified to review the CAPA as a whole, see what was done, approve of all the changes, and sign off on that CAPA. And after the approval has taken place, the CAPA is then closed. And once it's closed, the original item that was used to initiate that CAPA, that would be marked as closed as well. So you would have some tracking behind that. Okay, so that is the overall process, going into too many details here. I wanted to make sure we have plenty of time for some questions. And let me jump back over my slides. Okay, so just waiting for see if we have any questions from everyone that's on the call right now. Again, the CAPA example that I showed was a very quick example that we're walking through. We try to use out-of-the-box functionality as much as possible, using what's available in SharePoint. And part of our QMS Share Solution Accelerator, we work with you to determine specifically what your process looks like, so we can deploy this foundation and then work with you to determine how we customize that workflow to fit your needs the most, as opposed to getting a product that has all the CAPA piece predefined for you, and you have to force yourself to use that structure. So one question we have here, can QMS Share be incorporated into our existing SharePoint? When we typically implement QMS Share, we usually build it out as a separate site collection just to keep it separate and clean. And it allows us to build it out a little quicker. because we can script a lot of that deployment, and it keeps it separate from your existing solutions. However, since it is built on SharePoint, we do integrate the QMS site with your existing branding and navigation, so we can do some tie-in there, use your own branding, your own logo, things like that, and then you can update your existing navigation and the QMS Share navigation to work with each other so that users can get from one to the other very quickly. And then also, if you have any existing managed metadata that you're using in your environment, maybe business units or standards or anything like that, departments, things like that are pretty common. We can incorporate that managed metadata into the QMS Share as well, so they're not repeating the data. Okay. Let's see here. One other question. Can published documents be converted to PDF? I think this is for the controlled documents piece. Whenever a document goes through the approval process and is approved, right now what I showed you was the document is just copied to the published documents library as whatever format it was in. We do have an option to convert to PDF. If you are on premise, we can use a service that's available in SharePoint to do that conversion automatically, and that's included as part of SharePoint. But unfortunately that's only available on premise. In Office 365, we can do the conversion to PDF, but it would require a subscription to a third-party service that specializes in converting those documents. In addition, we would only really be able to convert Word documents without a third-party solution to convert Excel documents and other types of documents into PDF. But whenever a document is moved into the published documents library, that library is locked down and read-only, so users won't be able to make changes. The only people that can make changes in that library would be the administrators. Any changes would typically just go through the approval process from the working documents library to the published documents. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have. So I'm going to wrap up here. If you have any further questions, you can reach out to me and using the contact information above. You can contact Carol Redaway at Able Solutions for more information about QMS Share, or just if you have general questions about CAPA in general, we'd be happy to answer that. Okay, thank you for joining us and have a great day.